Welcome everyone. This is our first podcast of 2021, even though this is probably going to air in February. But we had a break, but we are so stoked to be back. I'm Dotsie Bausch, and I'm here with Alexandra Paul, and we're even doing this a little different because who knew we're still in COVID. And so we are not in the studio today where the sound quality is much better. We are all in the comfort of our own homes, and we are Zooming it. Thank you, Zoom. And we're recording on Zoom. So hopefully the sound quality will come out okay and come across well for everyone. But Alexandra, I've missed you.
It's so good to see you, Dotsie, even if it's virtual.
I went to see my family for the holidays, my husband and I. We were diligent about our mask wearing all the way there. We didn't hang out with anybody else but my family. I mean, we just, it was staying home for 8 days, but we did get to hang out. And so when I got back, you asked me if I would get a COVID test before today, because we thought we'd be in the studio today together face to face, and we are definitely closer than 6 feet apart at our little table in the studio. And I have not ever gotten a COVID test. You've had how many?
Maybe 8. The shallow nose, mid nose, and deep the brain.
I don't want the deep brain one. And anyway,
you need to have one just to be able to say that you had one. And
It is. Feels like a rite of passage. It does. So I couldn't. It's very difficult to get on the schedule down here in Orange County, or I had a challenging time. And you basically have to say you think you've been exposed to get a yes, you can get tested. I got multiple no's because I don't think I've been exposed, but then I finally started checking yes because I did fly, so it's possible, but it's not that I'm aware of, right? And so, but I couldn't get it until Thursday. So we're being safe today. I'm going to get it on Thursday, and so hopefully we'll be back in the studio next Tuesday. But you're in LA, and it's devastating there. All up and down, really, California's been hit hard, but you guys don't have any more beds left in the hospitals there. Is that correct?
At least for COVID beds. And Ian and I know 7 people in our friend circle who have it right now. So that's a lot.
Yeah.
And my mom keeps calling me saying, be careful. Are you going to the grocery store? We actually did besides getting the test, another rite of passage for 2020, 2021 is to order your food and have it delivered. And we've never done that. And so we did it for the first time just to appease our mothers. And
smart.
It was not a good experience because I do understand why it's important, and I'm grateful that the option is there, but I was really not comfortable with how much plastic everything was put in.
Oh yeah.
Vegetables were put in different plastics, and the paper bags, and I already feel terrible about the mask. I actually wash my my blue mask, that paper, and I probably shouldn't, but I can't stand to throw away a mask after one use. My environment, my sense of environment.
Well, why don't you get the fabric masks and wash them each time?
Oh yes, I do wash those.
Oh, okay.
The blue ones that the nurses wear, that they are actually more effective than cloth masks. So when I do wear that, I can't throw it away after one. I wash it, which is probably renders it thus like
You haven't checked in to see if I wash it 10 times, will it still be effective?
I have traveled twice by plane during this time, and I've changed to driving up to see my mom.
Mm-hmm.
An 11-hour drive, and actually like it better. I don't think I'm going to go back to flying up to see her.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some good things that came out of this. I have a huge sense of gratitude for just my life this past year, I would say. I think if I came out of 2020 with anything, which is a huge sense of feeling very grateful that I live with a man whom I adore, and our cats, and that we have some nature outside our door.
I know. Yeah, you and I have talked about that. It's just, I've almost had some strokes of guilt in a way, because I haven't lost anyone close that I love dearly to COVID. I know so many people did. So many people had to say goodbye to their nearest and dearest on FaceTime from the hospital. I mean, it's wreaked havoc. And I've felt coming out of this super grateful too, especially just with the organization at Switch for Good. We saw our biggest year of growth this year than ever, with our team growing from 3 to 8 people, almost tripling our impact from last year. And also in the support that we've received. So it was such mixed feelings during this year, kind of watching the organization really take off from all the talented and passionate people we've been able to bring in and on board, and not having to let those people go when COVID first hit too. I felt so grateful for that. But it was a real mixed bag of feelings all through 2020, which I think so many people can relate to.
We talk a lot on this show about what we put into our bodies, but as you and I know, health and wellness is more than just about how much we exercise and what we eat. It's also the products that we choose to use and surround ourselves with, including, of course, body care and home cleaners, which a lot of people don't realize, but they're so important to our overall long-term health. And today we have Lisa Bronner, who, that name Bronner might sound familiar. She's the granddaughter of the iconic Dr. Bronner. And she's on the show today to educate us on, leaning into greener living. She is the spokesperson for Dr. Bronner's. She's a mom of 3, a blogger at Going Green, and she has the knowledge and experience to help us lead greener, healthier lives.
All right, let's bring in Lisa Bronner. Yay, welcome.
Hi there, so good to be here.
Lisa, I gave you, told our audience a little bit about your involvement with Dr. Bronner's, but I didn't tell them my personal story with your liquid Castile soap, which when I first came to California, I was 18. It was really the first time I was living full-time on my own. And I used Dr. Bronner's liquid Castile soap on all the time in my shower, but I also, because it has these amazing, it says 18 in 1. You can use it for all these different uses. And one of them was brushing your teeth. And so, yes, I did brush my teeth with the liquid soap.
Yes. Yeah, we used to tease my grandfather that the reason he recommended that use was because he could take his teeth out of his mouth. He wore dentures. So, yeah, it works. If you're in a pinch or you need to travel light, it works. But we have since come out with toothpaste, which tastes so much better. It's fantastic.
I also want to tell the audience a little bit more about your company because it's so unique, and I want to make sure they understand how unique the company is, because I'm sure most of the audience is familiar with Dr. Bronner's and its very unique packaging, which hasn't changed much, at least still so in the 40 years that I've known of it. But you also, instead of having a chief executive officer, you have a cosmic engagement officer. You're a family-owned company. Is that your brother?
Yes, that's my oldest brother, David. He was arrested twice. The first was for planting hemp seed on the lawn of the DEA. And both times he was arrested, it was for the same thing. He was engaging in civil disobedience to protest the classification of industrial hemp as a narcotic. And it was not allowed to be grown in the US. And so he and some other folks planted seeds on the lawn of the DEA, knowing they'd be arrested, but for the purpose of bringing attention to the issue. And then the second time was President Obama in his campaigning had said he would address the issue, and he didn't. And so David had a cage built, a cell, and parked it in front of the White House and pressed hemp oil from hemp seeds, which is, it's illegal to have hemp plants at the time it was in the US. And so when they finally got him out of the cage, he was arrested for that too.
Sounds like someone I know.
Oh, are there other stories here?
Oh, yeah. Alexandra has lots of them getting arrested.
In the last 20 years, the company has grown over 1,000%. But you do things like use 100% post-consumer recycled plastic bottles, and you have a 5-to-1 compensation cap.
Yep.
means that could you explain that to our audience?
Yes, well, this is part of an idea that my grandfather, who was Dr. Bronner, originated, called constructive capitalism, which is the idea that everyone along the way of producing a product should benefit from the sale of the product, not just the owners, not just the final seller. And so, the farmers who grow the coconuts that produce our coconut oil are just as crucial to our final bottle of soap as the last person who sends it out of the warehouse. And so, so we have these steps in place that share the proceeds. One of them is our compensation cap, which means that the highest paid person in the company, the executives, receive no more than 5 times the compensation of the lowest paid fully vested worker. And so, and our entry starting wage is $20 an hour. So even that is a good bit higher than what is normal. But with that, we have also profit sharing at 10% of their annual salary, and bonuses at 10% of their annual salary. We give service bonuses for employees that have worked for 10 years, and then for each 5 years after that. So we have people that have been with us, longer than I've been with the company, who have known me from birth practically. So it's a family-owned company, but even the people who aren't blood family are definitely treated like family within the company. We have 6 cosmic principles that guide us, which was do well so you can do good. Because if we're not profitable as a company, we can't do all this other good stuff. The second one is to treat employees like family, which we do. Make sure they're well cared for, and realize that they're not just our employees. They are people. They have family members. They're mothers and fathers and sons and daughters, and they have other roles, and we need to make sure that they have the space to do their best there too.
Yeah. Well, watch out. I think that all of our listeners, including Alexandra and I, might be applying now. So,
well, please do.
It's a flush of people come in.
I think we have 9 open positions at the moment that are posted on our website. Okay. So please, and we need all sorts of people: automation, accounting, facilities, all sorts of people. So definitely go take a look at the careers page.
That's extraordinary. That is, as Alexandra mentioned, and looking at your products, there's also quite a bit of certifications on them. There's organic, they're vegan, they're fair trade. And, being vegan, I mean, all of us are aware of, some of the misleading labels that we see that aren't really steeped in reality, like 100% natural or cage-free or even grass-fed. So I'd love to talk labeling. Can you tell me, let's start with fair trade. What fair trade means at Dr. Bronner's, and how that is, how the public then can benefit from that, and why they should care.
Yeah, the purpose of fair trade was to fill in a gap that organic left. So organic was kind of the big trend in the early 2000s, and the reason was because people were concerned with the environment and concerned with the chemicals on their food and that sort of thing. And that's great, that's wonderful. And so, we were one of the first companies that went organic. We actually had to certify organic under the food standard because there was no organic certification for personal care. Oh. The USDA didn't like that we did that. They said, you can't use this for a soap. And we said, well, if we're using food grade oils, which we had to use food grade coconut oil in soap to certify, what difference does it make to you? So we won that battle. And now there are personal care standards for organic. So, but even once we had that, we realized, now that's good for the environment and the chemicals and that sort of thing, pesticides. But it's actually absolutely silent on the issue of labor. And so the people that have put their work into these ingredients, they could be treated horribly. They could have unfair hiring practices. They could be paid pittance. They could have horrible working conditions. There's nothing in organic about the people. And so fair trade rose up to fill in that gap so that people could know that everyone who participated in the manufacturing of this product was treated fairly, paid fairly, had fair hiring practices, worked in safe environments, and that sort of thing. And so that's where fair trade came from. Now, as soon as word got out that this existed, of course, you have people who are jumping on the bandwagon, people who are trying to sound fair trade without being fair trade, and you've got a plethora of different certifiers. And that makes a big difference. Now, the only thing that makes a certification worth having is that it's outside audited. Now, if we slap a certification on our own bottle, how can you trust that that means anything? I mean, it's what the fox guarding the hen house, I guess. But so an outside auditor is crucial. And different certifiers have more rigorous standards. So we've picked the most rigorous certifier, which is EcoCert now. There's been a little bit of maneuvering around amidst the certifiers, but that's who's certifying us now with the Fair for Life certification. And you see that little box logo on our products. And you can definitely, go into their website and see what standards they have. But it's everything you would want it to be. That, there's no discrimination based on any, personal characteristics or preferences, and that people are guaranteed work. It's not off and on. It's fair wages, fair prices, safe working conditions, and all that good stuff. So they go into our operations all around the world, and they even come into our operation here in Vista to make sure that there aren't any holes in the chain.
Is fair trade in terms of wages, does it change according to where the worker works? For example, what's $20 an hour here would be a lot, much more maybe than in Indonesia?
Yes, absolutely. It is based on location as well. And that's why the word fair is, subjective in that way. It does take into effect what is a living wage in the various areas. So, because you're right, it wouldn't transfer just to do the numbers.
Are there companies that labeled certifiers that you feel are not honorable?
Yes, and I mean, it is a bit of a quagmire. And so, although I would say it takes a good bit of research to weed out the strong from the weak, once you know what you're looking for, it does help a lot. Because anybody can make a pretty little logo and slap it on a label. You've got to dig a little bit more, and it means not just making your decisions when you're standing in a store or clicking through a website. You need to take the time to research what that particular certification is and what's behind it. First question, is it third-party audited? Does it require an outside auditor? What companies have it? Are they, if you already know there's this one reputable company and they use this one, that's probably a sign that it's a strong one. But each of these certifiers has their own websites and has their own lists of standards that they are holding companies to. And you can compare them and you can see, well, this certifier is looking for, these 10 things and this other one's only looking for 4. So that's a sign that one's stronger than the other. It is a lot to wade through at first. So I hope, people can find some trustworthy voices to guide them along that way. As far as fair trade goes, Fair World Project is an excellent organization that has helped to break these down. They've got actually a great breakdown of certifiers. They're not a certifier. Fair World Project is an advocacy organization. And they've done a good job of breaking down which certifications are really valuable and they leave off the ones that aren't so much.
Yeah. I think, the one that's so ubiquitous, like you mentioned earlier, is organic. What if food products and products, because you guys use food grade products in your soaps, have to go through to really be labeled organic? And do we really need to focus on buying organic?
Yeah, it really depends upon what it is you're buying. And the Dirty Dozen list, which is published by the Environmental Working Group, is a great place to start, especially if your budget isn't, exhaustive, because it tells you where's the most important place to put your money. But there are places that I would agree that organic doesn't matter. When it comes to raw produce, I would say that's where it matters the most, because that's where we are. Organic is about applying chemical fertilizers, pesticides, GM, genetic modification, and all of that. and however close your product is to the application, it makes the stakes higher and organic matters more. So when we're talking about produce, that is where I would say organic matters the most. And even within the realm of produce, as you said, there are places where it matters more than others. Like if it's an item that you can't peel and you eat the skin, you eat the whole thing, organic matters a lot because you can't remove the outer layer that might have been treated with a pesticide or with a chemical fertilizer. There are also certain crops that just don't need chemical input. They grow well, they're very hardy, and those, you know, if you need to allocate your budget in certain areas, you can let those go.
Like what?
So for crops that don't need a whole lot of chemical input, well, okay, so if we're talking about genetic modification, which is a big one, I always buy organic corn because GMO corn is one of the crops that is genetically modified. Corn, rice, sugar, because most of our sugar actually comes from sugar beets, not from sugar cane, unless it says cane sugar. And sugar beets are heavily genetically modified. So there, for the purpose of genetic modification, I would go organic. For things that are thick-skinned that aren't as important, as bananas aren't as important, melons, because we generally don't eat the rinds, you know, aren't as important. Soft-skinned things like your peaches, your grapes, your strawberries, very vulnerable crops, those things are very important because they absorb the chemicals. You can't peel them, they're hard to wash. You need to prioritize buying organic there, which means it is going to be more expensive, and you also need to buy in season. I mean, trying to buy organic strawberries in December,
Right.
First of all, they're not going to taste very good because it's not the season, but they're going to be insanely expensive and have traveled a really long way to get to you if you're here in the Northern Hemisphere. So having patience for waiting for the food to come around, and then, you know, come April here in San Diego, like that's prime strawberry season. You can practically trip over them. And so, you know, learning when you should be buying what. You know, the best thing, of course, is to grow your own, but that's not what all of us can do. The second best is to know your farmer, which means to try to buy local from people who are growing it through CSAs, community supported agriculture, or farmers markets where you are knowing your farmer. And so, you know, then if you need to rely on grocery stores, of course, you can find some that buy more local. More local is what's going to benefit your local economy. It's also going to mean your food is fresher, and so it will have had less nutrient loss. I know you know all of this, but I throw it in there because it's new to some people.
You know, it's so important. I wanted to ask you about arsenic because we had a doctor on not too long ago that said, oh, you know, based off the runoff from animal agriculture, especially from chicken manure, that's filled with arsenic, that it's, and because he was talking about brown rice, and because brown rice is so susceptible and can soak up what's in the soil like a sponge, he was like, no more brown rice or organic brown rice. It's filled with arsenic.
Yeah, what do you do with that?
We had some listeners email us. They're like, are you kidding me? I can't have brown rice. What do you know about arsenic and what foods it soaks into the most?
Yeah, well, I mean, definitely a crop like rice that's so water dependent would be more susceptible to contaminated water. That is, it so taps into the larger issue of our food supply and the food cycle and all of that. You know, as far as arsenic in particular, honestly, I don't know what crops would be most susceptible to that. If the issue is chicken and rice, then you would perhaps want to look at areas where they're not grown necessarily near each other. I've learned the most about rice from Lindbergh rice, because we worked with them so closely on the GMO debate here in California. But you've put your finger on one of the saddest things about the way our food is produced right now, and how it's broken. And that it used to be that the raising of livestock, chickens and cattle, would benefit the growing of your produce, because the manure could be used to benefit your plants. But now, because our livestock raising is so heavily filled with antibiotics and with crazy chemical input, their manure is toxic. And you certainly can't put it on your produce intentionally, but even the runoff into our waterways is contaminating it for miles and miles around. And so you've got these huge dead zones in our waterways and in our river deltas and that sort of thing, places that this used to be where the most life was found, and now it's where the least life is found. And this gets to a certification that I didn't touch on when we were talking about that. Are you familiar with the regenerative organic certification? This one's new.
We had some questions about it though. So
okay, yeah.
I'd love for you to go into it.
I mean, I'll say it here. Regenerative organic, and we can talk more about the details of it with your questions, but it's all about healing that cycle that is, it's not new, it's the old way of having things work in harmony with each other, and having not having these breaks where you can't have your animals near your produce because they're contaminate each other. They're supposed to benefit each other. And so regenerative organic is all about healing that cycle and letting it do what it was kind of designed to do.
So what is something that is labeled with the regenerative organic label, which I think your products are? What does that mean in terms of that actual product? Why are they different than simply organic? What's happened to them?
Oh goodness, it's a wonderful thing. So labels were getting kind of busy. Well, I'm one to talk about a busy label with Dr. Bronner's, but they were getting even busier as far as the certifications go. I mean, we have organic, we have fair trade, we have vegan and leaping bunny and non-GMO and all of these things. That's a lot to keep up with, and it's kind of messy visually. And so, and then you come to a point where you have to decide, oh goodness, this one's organic, but this one's fair trade, and which one do I pick? So regenerative organic, if I can borrow from Lord of the Rings, is one label to rule them all. It's bringing them all under one tidy, complex, but tidy certification that does everything you want it to do. You want it to be organic with no synthetic chemical input. You want it to be fair trade, where people have been treated fairly along the way. You want it to be leaping bunny certified with no animal cruelty. You want it to be humane. And instead of having all of these different labels and certifications, regenerative organic brings them all together. So regenerative organic has 3 pillars. One pillar is organic. So that deals with the environmental and chemical aspects.
What does it mean to be organic? Because I had heard that it means the soil needs to not have pesticides in it or herbicides for 7 years, but then there's other organics that do have some stuff on them.
Right. Well, it does depend upon your certifier and what they require. Okay. So, and what you're certifying. So, the organic transition is a 3-year process. And this 3-year process is what actually is prohibitive for family farmers to do, because for 3 years, you have to use organic practices, but you can't claim your product to be organic. So you're taking on the added effort and the added cost of organic practices without being able to, tell people about it, basically. And family farms, that's almost prohibitive. Part of what Dr. Bronner's does in the farmers that we work with is that we help them to make this transition, because otherwise on their own they would not be able to do that. So we help fund their transition and guide them through all of the hoops of that. So with organic practices, it is a 3-year transition period, and if you haven't applied any sort of chemical input, and there is a specific list of yes and no as far as what can be used on them, and I don't have that list memorized, but Oregon Tilth is our certifier, and you can check that out. So 3 years of not using any chemical input, not using genetically modified anything on your crops, and not, if it's relevant, having the radiation. Trying to think of some of the other standards there, but it's a 3-year process, and then you can be certified beyond that. One of the difficulties that's come, I know this happened with rice, is that a farmer had a crop or a field that was in transition and adjacent to somebody else's field that was not, it was conventional, and their genetically modified rice blew over into the transition field and contaminated it with a genetically modified variety, which, scientists could analyze the rice that coming out of this field and see that it's genetically modified. And the farmer that was trying to transition his fields couldn't do anything about it. And there was lawsuits and all sorts of messy things like that. So it's not easy, and there's many reasons why people don't choose to go organic, other than because they don't care. Often they care, but they just can't financially. So earlier we were talking about, where does organic not matter? Organic doesn't necessarily matter as much when it comes to things like animals, actually. I don't put a whole lot of value. I mean, I know your topic is to a mostly vegan audience, but even, just to be aware, the issue with animals is how they're treated. And there's nothing in organic standards about humane treatment of animals. And so slapping the organic label, even a certification that they were fed organic food, that's not really getting at what our problems are in the raising of our livestock. So there, I wouldn't prioritize that. We very much encourage people to reduce their animal consumption, and to be very careful about where they source things from. The best way, especially with animals, is to know your farmer, know your rancher, and to buy through CSAs. So many of them deliver now. We've made great strides in delivery methods, especially under refrigeration. So that's helpful. But yeah, that's definitely an area where I wouldn't say organic is really the thing you should be looking for.
Okay. And I'm sorry, because I inserted myself when you were giving a list of the important elements of being a regenerative organic label. So please continue. Now we understand what organic means. Tell us more about what how regenerative organic improves on that.
Yes. So the 3 pillars of regenerative organic certification. The one is the organic standards of the lack of chemical input and lack of GMOs. The second is fair trade, that the labor, the people involved in the production are fairly treated. And the third is animal welfare. And this, again, is an area that organic doesn't address, fair trade doesn't address. So animal welfare, that any animals that happen to be involved in the production, whether they are the production or whether their habitat might have been impacted by the production, that the welfare was preserved and protected. So let's take palm oil. Let's just dive into a hot topic right there. Yeah. So, okay, palm oil is a plant-based oil. It doesn't require animal input. However, the way that palm oil has been produced in the world has been devastating to habitat for indigenous animals. So, you can say, well, what does animal welfare have to do with palm? It has to do with how were those fields developed? I mean, were they clear cutting, jungles and habitats that housed many animals and displaced them and such. So regenerative organic certification takes into consideration the whole realm of animal well-being, whether they were directly involved or not. So what you'll see is the regenerative organic logo, which looks like a little leaf with RO on it, little circle with 2 leaves and an RO. And then you'll see the word bronze, silver, or gold, and that would be on the label. So that would be on our coconut label. And then when it's just an ingredient like our mint oil, that's just a word in the ingredient list, because you can't certify a whole multi-ingredient product. We can't put the label on the soap, even though it contains regenerative organic palm and coconut oil.
Okay. obviously in this whole entire field that you're speaking about, you're very woke. I mean, you really are clearing things up for so many of us listening, I know. And I'd love to just kind of dive into your woke moment.
I suppose I'm probably not the only mom who has made changes on behalf of their children that they weren't motivated enough to make on behalf of themselves. But I'll take it. I appreciate it. At the time, I did have that, the 2-year-old that was into everything, and I didn't realize he was even with me. I would clean subversively, like when they were napping, I would go sneak off and clean, which is like not what you want to do when you finally get your 2-year-old to bed. But and so I didn't realize he was there, and I had a spray bottle, and I'd set it down, and he's a kid that likes to fiddle with stuff, so he picked that thing up and just sprayed it right in his mouth. And I was astounded that not even poison control knew what was in it. And I was like, wait a second, how can you not know what's in this? Like, what are you there for?
What was it? Was it like a Windex or a...
It was 409.
Oh, okay.
It was 409.
You have to put the ingredients on 409, all the chemicals?
No. Ingredients have not had to be on cleaning products until California has been the first state to pass an Ingredient Disclosure Act, and it went into effect last year on websites, and it's supposed to go into effect on product labels. And the hope is that with California being such a large market, that manufacturers will, change the whole product line for the nation and not just for California. So prior to that, the only thing you had on cleaning products was hazard labels. I mean, so if they had certain ingredients, then it would trigger certain hazard labels. And I mean, that helped a little bit. Certainly if you see a hazard label that says, causes damage to the unborn child, that's a problem. But you wouldn't know specifically what was in it. So now that is starting, but like just in the last year or so.
Wow. Oh gosh. So what did you do? I mean, you had, so then you didn't know what it was. It was okay. And then that was a big shift for you on what you're using in your home. Mom she still has to clean certain things with Ajax because she just says nothing else works. So develop that too. Because you gotta get her off the Ajax and breathing that.
There's so many levels on which to convince people, and I actually have an article about how to convince people that they need to get on board the green cleaning boat. Because some people, it's knowledge, they don't trust that a soap can clean things as well as bleach, or they don't trust that baking soda can scour things as well as Ajax or Comet. Sometimes it's so emotional, it's so habit, their mother used it, they've been using it all these years, there's a comfort and a satisfaction there. Sometimes it's sensory. Sometimes it's like, that doesn't smell right, that these green cleaners, they don't smell clean enough. We are a bit addicted to that, nose scouring, hardly be able to inhale type smell. Wow, that must be clean. And so, there's so many levels, and you almost have to dive into some psychology with your target audience to figure out what is it that they're kind of hung up on, and how can we get them around it? Not an easy thing, but I've learned a lot. Yeah. So that moment when my son sprayed the 409 into his mouth, and then I called poison control, and they said, I don't know, does he look sick? And he was fine. But I think it was that day or the next day that I made my first bottle of all-purpose house cleaning spray with the Dr. Bronner's Castile soap. And you would think that I, of all people, would have done that earlier, but I hadn't. And so I started using, that was the first, I would say, green cleaner I started to use, was using an all-purpose spray with a spray bottle and a 1/4 cup of our soap and water, and some tea tree essential oil. And I've been using that ever since. So, and I've added more. You can clean your whole house with that. I would throw in some baking soda, but you can make some fancier cleaners if you like to, if you want to be a little bit more complicated.
I'll go into the bathroom because she'll close the door and turn, on the shower, right? Because she needs water to clean with Ajax. And then it's this steaming Ajax. And I'm thinking, you're going to have cancer tomorrow.
Well, it's good to know the science behind cleaning, because then you have more confidence in your cleaners, and you know how they're working and if they're working, and if you need to take things up a notch. So there's three ways in which cleaning happens. There's chemical cleaning, like having a chemical that destroys germs, breaks down dirt, grime, oils, that sort of thing. There's thermal cleaning, which is cleaning things with heat or with cold. That's the sort of cleaning that happens in an autoclave, or your self-cleaning oven that gets up to 900 degrees. So that's thermal cleaning. And then there's mechanical cleaning, which actually scrubbing, actually pushing the dirt, the grime off. And so if you use just one of those methods of cleaning, just either chemical or thermal or mechanical, you have to do a really extreme version of it. So you have to have, the 900 degree oven, or you have to have the chemical cleaner that's just going to blast everything and kill everything in its path. Or if you use only mechanical methods, that's where we're talking like, sandblasting or pressure washing. Those are mechanical cleaning. So better than just using one of those is to combine them. Use some chemical cleaning, and soap in this context is a chemical in that it works by chemistry, by the way it attracts to grime. So using some chemistry, some thermal help, warm water, hot water, and some mechanical action, scrubbing, using a scouring agent like baking powder. Or baking soda, not baking powder. Using a scrubby or a stiff brush. That's a mechanical action. And if you're using each of these cleaning methods, you don't need to go extreme. So the problem with the extreme is the side effects, is if something goes wrong. And generally, the method that conventional cleaners use is chemical cleaning. These extreme chemical cleaners that, yes, they clean. They do. I'm not going to argue, like, the surface is clean, but what else has happened? And often it's that there are fumes involved that are very dangerous to the user, not to mention anybody else that happens to be around. Or if somebody were to get a hold of them and use them inappropriately, i.e. a child or an animal, a pet, they're often irreparable in the harm that they do. I mean, the warnings on things like Drano and oven cleaner, those are the two worst common household cleaners, because they're designed to eat through anything. They're designed to eat through whatever is in your drain, whatever is in your oven, and they don't know when to stop. They don't know, oh, I've been applied to a throat instead of a pipe. I need not to act. No, obviously not. They're still going to eat through anything. And then if you have like a septic system, I live out in the country, so I do, they're just out there in your septic tank, which eventually filters out into your yard. Or if you're on a sewer system, they end up out in the waterways. And so they're living on a long time after us. So the issue of using a conventional method isn't that they don't work. They do work. It's their side effects, and whether or not we're realizing exactly all that they're doing. It was a wake-up call for me as a stay-at-home mom, further motivating me to continue what I'm doing, when the highest levels of COPD are from professional house cleaners and stay-at-home moms. The highest levels. You would think it would be from some sort of industrial, factory worker, manufacturing, something or other. No, professional house cleaners and stay-at-home moms, because they are constantly exposed to the chemicals in their cleaning products, bleach, and it's causing lung damage to them. That's not worth it. So it's not an either or. It's not either my house is going to be clean or I'm going to be dead. No, there's a middle ground. Just use cleaners that are that will get the job done, but that don't cause these side effects. So the thing about soap is that it's not new. I mean, soap's been around for millennia. There's actually record of soap in not prehistoric, but ancient times, because soap can make itself in a way. The most simple soap is using animal fat and fire ashes. So just picture somebody cooking over a fire and there's pot bubbles over and it mixes with the ashes. And then you notice that the next time it rains, wow, there's like some clean streaks on the rocks. That's because a very basic soap was made. And that's all soap is. It's a reaction between an oil, doesn't have to be animal based, and a strong alkali, which you have that in ashes, but sodium or potassium hydroxide more commonly. And that makes soap, and it's been around forever, but it still works. So do you want to hear about the science of how soap actually cleans? That's okay. All right.
I cleaned an oven that was a commercial oven, just baking soda and vinegar. And it was, it didn't even take a lot of the scouring. You just mix it together, put it in as a paste over within the oven. You didn't have to turn the oven on. You just waited. No, I don't think I even turned the oven on. I just waited for a while, and then I came back and just basically scooped it out.
Well, the thing about soap, and this will really help people who just don't trust it, they don't trust something as simple as soap. So soap works in that it's an amazing molecule that I call it bipolar. It's not actually the scientific word, but usually a molecule is either positively charged or negatively charged, and as such, it's attracted to its opposite. Soap is unusual in that within it, one molecule, one end of it is positively charged and the other end of it is negatively charged. And the reason this is important is because oil and water, as you know, are opposite or do not mix. Soap makes them mix. It's an emulsifier. What soap does is it forms something around oil called a micelle. Because one end of it is attracted, actually, we call it, it's hydrophobic. It's repelled by water, attracted to oil. A soap molecule will latch on to grease and call all of its friends, and all of the soap molecules will surround grease and basically make this sphere. And that sphere is called a micelle. And then the outside, the other end of the soap molecules that are now all facing out, are attracted to water. So you have water passing by. It's like a bit of a magnetism of sort, and it carries this whole little chunk that's got the soap molecules with the oil trapped inside, and it carries it away. This is how soap works. This explains why soap requires water. You can't have a waterless soap. You hear waterless cleaners, that's where it's actually just killing a bacteria, but it's not cleaning, it's not getting rid of it. Soap requires water because it needs that rinsing agent. It also requires a little bit of time to get itself kind of situated around the grease. It requires a little bit of mechanical action. That's why it's good when you're washing your hands. You do this because it's helping the soap kind of get itself around the molecules of grease and other oils on your skin. Now, I keep saying grease, and you're like, well, I'm not all that worried about grease on my skin. I'm worried about bacteria on my skin,
Mm-hmm.
well, or viruses.
Mm-hmm.
Many, actually, all of them have a lipid layer around them, and the lipid is a type of fat. And so, in a sense, even though we're talking about something alive like a bacteria or a virus, they too are surrounded by a fat or a grease. It's a lipid layer. And so the soap is similarly attracted to the bacteria and the virus, similarly latching onto it at the same time as it's latching onto water and being carried away. So every little step in those hand washing charts, wow, there's so much science behind it. So, if you're into that and you really want to know, like, go look, why 20 seconds? Why soap? Why rinsing? Why drying? Every single step has a lot of science into why that's the best recommendation.
I want to follow up with Dottie's mom, who's a wonderful woman. I've met her several times, and but if she's stuck on her Ajax, we need to get her off. What would you recommend?
What mix?
Yeah. So we use Ajax, Comet, things like that because they're scouring. They scrub things off. It's a mechanical cleaner. Now they also have a surfactant in it, and surfactant is a chemical word that includes soap and detergent. A surfactant is something that breaks the surface tension of water, because believe it or not, water is actually really hard. You know that if you've ever done a belly flop. Soap breaks that. And so something like Ajax is going to have both a scouring thing and a surfactant. So let's do those two elements, but without with a more natural source. I use the word natural very loosely. In general, if you see the word natural on a label, it means absolutely nothing. In my context, I mean something that's very close to nature, something that didn't take a whole lot of synthesis. Because if it comes very close to nature, it can go back to nature very easily. It's biodegradable. It's not going to, leave a residue that will be there forever. So we need a surfactant. We need a scouring agent. As I've said, baking soda is a fantastic scouring agent. It's gentle. It's very small particles, so it's safe for surfaces. It breaks down very readily. I mean, it's sodium bicarbonate. It's something that can break down, so it's not going to leave any sort of residue. It's something that obviously we can ingest because we cook with it. So as far as a danger of having it around the house, it's not a problem there. So the scouring agent, baking soda, is fantastic. Now a surfactant, so mix it with soap. Sometimes I'll pre-mix it, but most often I have a shaker jar. It's actually a repurposed plastic spice jar that I fill up with baking soda. Sprinkle that on your sink or whatever grubby surface, and then spray it with your all-purpose cleaner, which, as I said before, is a quarter cup of Castile soap with a quart of water. And then you've got a surfactant with the scouring powder. So sprinkle, spray, scrub, and rinse. And it's the exact same effect as something like Ajax. Now, I will tell you, it does not smell as strong as Ajax or any sort of conventional cleaner. If that's the holdup, add essential oils, like whatever you like, any essential oil, and you can make it smell however you want. That's not necessary. That's not going to make it clean better, but if it makes you feel better, that's important too. So.
There's a lot of psychology in cleaning products that like you said, there's no doubt. I had a coach during my cycling career early on that tried to get me to drink baking soda and water before every training session to mitigate the lactic acid.
Oh,
because
okay.
It'll do that. It'll neutralize lactic acid and other types of acid. I did it a couple of times, and it is really, it's not delicious, and it is a little weird on the stomach. But anyway, you can ingest it safely.
Baking soda is alkaline, the base. Soap is also a base. And so, know that going in, but if you want to have a reaction, spray some vinegar on it, as Alexandra was saying, and take advantage of that reaction as you're cleaning. Vinegar is another great, cleaner because it's an acid. So it will eat through grime, lifting it up. If you let your vinaigrette separate, the oil floats to the top because the vinegar lifts it up because it's got a heavier density. And so, spray that on your surfaces, give it some time, go have a cup of coffee and come back, and it will have lifted up the grime, and then you can wipe it away with very minimal effort.
Is it white vinegar? Are there other kinds of vinegars that you like for cleaning, or mostly white?
No, I mean, white vinegar is all you need. There's no health benefit of using a fancier vinegar, or apple cider, or red wine, or balsamic. No, I just use white. It's unless for whatever reason you have an endless supply. Now, if you happen to have a supply of lemons, that's another great cleaner. And here, as I said, in San Diego, we often have lemons running down the street this time of year, clogging up the gutters. So if you happen to have a lot of lemons, that's another great acid that you can use in your cleaning, and use that to clean things. So acid works great on dissolving minerals and lifting grime. So minerals such as water spots, those are actually mineral deposits, or fingerprints on a mirror, that's actually oil. So any sort of vinegar or lemon juice is a great way to lift those up very, very safely, very easily. You don't need to go buy something expensive. Cars, I recommend club soda, which has carbonic acid in it, but that's not going to harm the wax of your car. Vinegar is, believe it or not, it's got a pH of 2. It's a pretty strong acid. You don't want to. It will eat through the wax, and you would have to re-wax your car. So unless you're very careful in your application, but club soda makes a great window cleaner for cars. Or if you're just going to spray your cloth and then wipe the window, that works too with vinegar.
What kind of chemicals should people be looking for to avoid when they look at the ingredient label of a lotion or a makeup?
Yes. So we have to realize that our skin is our body's largest organ, and our skin is not impervious. Our skin is permeable. And we take advantage of the fact that our skin is permeable, meaning things can transfer through it. When we have a topical medicine or a patch of some sort for birth control or for nicotine, the reason those things work or the science behind it is the fact that the skin is permeable. And so we have to realize that anything that goes on our skin has the possibility of going into our bodies. Now, some things definitely pass through our skin more easily than others, and some don't. But if you're not a dermatologist or an expert in skin, you might not want to memorize that list of what goes through and what doesn't. So the big things, I actually have a list of 12 that I look for. So if I pick up a bottle, and then trust me, it took me forever to go find a new product in a store because I spend like an hour in the aisle. First of all, ignore what is on the front of a bottle. Ignore it, no matter how pretty it is or how natural looking it is. If it's brown or if it's matte or if it's green or if it's white, ignore that. That means nothing as far as what's in there. Ignore words like natural. That means nothing. There's no meaning behind the word natural. Pure, eco-friendly, even words like non-comedogenic. That doesn't have a definition when it comes to labeling. Now, people think the word non-comedogenic means that it doesn't clog pores, but there's no measurable basis for a product saying that. So you can't just look at that word. You have to look at the ingredients. So pick up a product and turn it around. Unlike skincare products, body care products have been labeled for a while, except for fragrance, which is something I'll get into in a minute. It's on my top 12 to watch for. So you want to look at the ingredient list. Obviously, if you can pronounce an ingredient, if it's something you can picture growing, that's a plus, because it means it's close to nature. Our bodies are close to nature. Our bodies can process that. It's not going to be something that our body's like, what is this? I don't know what to do with it, so I'm going to store it. I don't know what to do with it, so I'm just going to shove it somewhere, like my liver. And then, we end up with something called biotoxicity, when our body takes in things that it doesn't know what to do with. It doesn't even know how to flush it through. So if you can recognize the ingredients in the list, that's generally a plus. Coconut oil, picture that. You can picture, maybe it has sunflower seed oil or rosemary extract. Those are all things you can picture. Then the longer the list, the more likelihood of problems. So, a shorter list is generally a better idea. And then there's a group of ingredients that I generally avoid. One of them is parabens. Now, parabens are a preservative. They're meant to keep the product from going rancid. That's a good thing. We don't want rancid products. But once again, what's the side effect? Yes, it keeps the product from going rancid, but the problem is that some parabens have a great impact on our hormones. They're hormone disruptors, and they either are estrogenetic, which means that they promote extra estrogen, or they mimic estrogen, or they prevent it. And so some of the parabens have this impact. Our bodies don't know what to do with it. It just stores it. And so if it has a paraben, and paraben will be the second half of a word, it'll be like methyl paraben. If I see that word, I'm going to avoid that product. Another category of ingredients I avoid, it's such a long word, they don't even put the whole word on the label. You'll just see MEA, or DEA or TEA, which is, oh goodness, monoethyl diamide. I think I left out a syllable or two. Anyhow, those in the presence of nitrogen. So if there's also something that will give a nitrogen to it, it actually creates something that's carcinogenic. Our bodies are strong, and it can deal with some input of this. But if it's something that we are applying to our body every day for years, our body is only so strong. And if it's in, 5 products that we apply to our bodies every day for years, then that's a lot. And so within the cosmetic industry, there's a term called GRAS, which is GRAS, generally regarded as safe. And ingredients can be given this designation, generally regarded as safe. It's not a very hard sounding designation, but basically what it means is that at certain concentrations and tested over a certain period of time, this ingredient is not going to hurt you. Okay, well, what if that ingredient that at that concentration isn't going to hurt me is actually in half of the products that I'm using on my body? That adds up to a whole lot more. And so we're seeing these skyrocketing levels of allergies, of reproductive dysfunction. We're seeing even neurological and behavioral issues in our society. And where are they coming from? A lot has to do with food, different topic. But let's also look at the chemical input we're putting on our bodies through our personal care products. So when you have things like parabens and the EAs, the MEA, DEA, TEA, those are part of that problem. Now, I'm not even partway through my list of things I look for. So parabens, the MEAs and their friends, and then you have ethoxylated ingredients. And this is a group of ingredients that's gone through a process called ethoxylation. It makes them, again, more shelf stable. So that's why they're there, to make the product last longer on the shelf. But it goes through a process that produces a byproduct called 1,4-dioxane. And 1,4-dioxane is a known human carcinogen. You will never see 1,4-dioxane on a label. It's not an ingredient. It wasn't added, but it was produced as a byproduct. And so there was a study, this one was about 10 years ago. No, it wasn't. It was 2008. So goodness, 13 years ago. Where a scientist in curiosity, might have been a parent, went into a drugstore and bought a whole bunch of products, took them home and tested them for the presence of 1,4-dioxane. And about 80% of them came back positive. This is a known human carcinogen, not even a possibility. And it was because the ingredients in them were producing it as a byproduct. And there was a lot of press and people, changed things and made some progress. But still you see things like sodium lauryl sulfate.
Yeah. The shampoo especially.
Mm-hmm. Anything that foams beautifully, like shampoo, bubble bath, body wash, probably has sodium lauryl sulfate in it. That F, you hear that? Sodium lauryl sulfate? That F means that it went through ethoxylation, and there is the possibility that it will have produced 1,4-dioxane. This is going to wipe out a whole lot of options when you're shopping. That's abbreviated SLES. Now, because chemistry is, not very imaginative in how they name things, it has a related, there's a related ingredient called sodium lauryl sulfate. It's not the same thing. It didn't go through ethoxylation. Sodium lauryl sulfate shouldn't be in body care either, because it's extremely drying, because it's very, very good at grabbing oil, which is super if you're washing your dishes. You want it to grab the oil. You don't want it to grab every single bit of oil out of your skin. So I recommend against SLS, which is sodium lauryl sulfate, in body care products. Sodium lauryl sulfate is common in toothpaste. And I've noticed, this is not scientifically verified, I've noticed that 2 of my kids, when they use toothpaste with SLS in them, develop canker sores. And I've seen some studies that are pointing to that, although it's not something that's been, proven. But these are things they're great at doing what they say they do, grabbing grime and stuff, but we got to realize that there's more that we need them to do.
At a big expense.
Yeah, absolutely. So So those are some of them. There are other ingredients like urea in products that are formaldehyde producers. Formaldehyde is another known human carcinogen. It's not added to products. It can develop over time the longer they sit on the shelves. It's there as a preservative. So again, if you see an ingredient that involves the word urea, it's a formaldehyde releaser. And, it's great, again, for your products not to go bad, but at what cost does that have to your body? So there are other perfectly fine preservatives, such as tocopherols. Rosemary actually can be a preservative too, although it's very dark in color. So oftentimes people don't use it because it makes your product very dark. But there are other options. And fortunately, word's getting out that there are other options.
And people can find this list on your blog.
Yes.
To dive in deeper.
Yes. So my blog is lisabronner.com, and it's Going Green with Lisa Bronner. And I've got a list of 12 things to watch out for in the personal care. And it includes the psychological things like a matte colored bottle. That must be healthy.
It's crazy.
You could put arsenic in a matte colored bottle and it doesn't make it any healthier.
No.
Thank you so much for just so much amazing information. We have more to talk to you about, but we unfortunately can't do it today, but we will have you back because I want to dive deeper into GMOs. I had a lot of questions about those. And of course, the hemp seed.
And I want to tell you the happy ending of the hemp thing and my brother's being arrested is that in the end of 2019, believe it or not, President Trump signed the Farm Bill, which included declassifying industrial or categorizing industrial hemp as a narcotic. And so it is now legal to grow and use industrial hemp in food and in personal care products. So that was a big thing. And Dr. Bronner's now uses domestic hemp seed oil in all of our products. So it used to be imported, but now we can grow it here.
Something to celebrate from 2020, whenever he signed that.
2019.
Okay. All right. 2020 still sucks. All right. Never mind.
Sorry.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thanks so much for having me.
So thank you so much for tuning in today. If we helped you in any way, then click the subscribe button and let's keep hanging out together. We have so much more to share with you.
And if you need more information on actually making the switch for good, please visit us at switchforgood.org for loads of info. And you can subscribe to our mailing list where you will receive all sorts of super cool gifts, discount codes to our very fave dairy-free products, and a lifetime of powerful health tips.
So join us on the journey to switch for good. This is the future.